What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto had Madara and the Kyuubi sealed inside of him, or what if Naruto was a low born in Westeros and became king, go check out my main channel. And if you're interested in what if Naruto was a assassin in Westeros, or what if Naruto was trained by a Sith Lord, go check out my third channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. Naruto sighed as he leaned back against his chair within his office at the Hokage Tower. He'd returned from the the land of hot springs. Much of his time there had been spent vacating rather than working. He couldn't say that he didn't deserve some rest. He'd rested well and had much fun in the village. He'd never laughed so hard while he spent his time at the land led by Princess Koyoki Kazahama. Since tomorrow would be his birthday, he thought it was best to return home. The Godame had told him to return before the 10th, and so he'd returned. However, since he'd missed much work, he decided to get on with it before anything else. He was thankful that Jiraiya was in the village. The man gave him the good news that his publisher liked his book after today and had already gone with the publishing. Jiraiya had organized a good deal with the man. The book had hit the shelves 4 days ago. He'd already received some good reports from some critics, but there were some who criticized his work. However, overall the reception from critics was good. It made him smile looking at their reviews. The sales were going slow, but given how the readers liked it, he was sure after a week or 2 or 3 the book would be a hit. The first release was here in Konoha, and the sales were better than any other places it had been released. It was still early days to draw any conclusions. The doors to his office burst open. He sighed when this happened. There was a lot of work in his desk that he needed to do, and some documents he needed to sign. He also had other documents to approve on behalf of the United Nations Alliance. All these work required him to do, and he still had to deal with this. Nissan, Konohamaru said as he entered the office. It wasn't a rare picture to see Konohamaru inside his office. The boy usually came here to bother him much, but he always gave time for the boy. Have I not beaten some manners into you, Konohamaru? Did I not tell you to knock before you enter my office? Isn't that the proper way for the candidate of the 7th Hokage? He gave a stern look on the boy that made him flinch. Sorry, Konohamaru said, scratching the back of his head with a sheepish smile. I was just really excited to seeing you since you have been gone for so long. I can see, Naruto said, keeping his tone stern. Now go back and do what I taught you, or you'll face a punishment. Konohamaru didn't need to be told twice. He went away and closed the door. He knocked and Naruto allowed him to enter. Afternoon, Nissan the genin greeted politely, showing some manners. Naruto had beat into him. The blonde smiled at the boy. Afternoon, how have you been? Good, Konohamaru responded. I was wondering if you could teach me something new, and there is someone who would like to be taught by you also. This caught Naruto's attention. Who is it? Hyuga Hanabi, Hinata's younger sister. Naruto muttered, this is a surprise. Where is she? She is at the training ground. Give me 2 hours, Konohamaru grinned. Does this mean that you'll train her? He seemed really excited about this. It was very obvious by the look on his eyes. Go to the training ground, Naruto ordered without answering the question. I've work to do. Yes sir. Konohamaru gave a slight mock salute before dashing off to the training ground where Hanabi was waiting for him. He was probably running there to tell her the good news. Naruto shook his head seeing the boy run off. Within 2 hours the sun would be setting, but training was a lot better when their sun wasn't beating down on you without much time going. A purple-haired Umbu appeared before the blonde. Naruto acted as though he hadn't sensed her, but he knew she was there. She mostly hanged about his office in the shadows. However, it wasn't always that she did that. Finally, Naruto looked up to her. Was there something? She was probably done for the day, so she would be giving her a report before walking away. He didn't have many conversations with the woman aside from work. She wasn't a bad person. She was okay. There was one rude Umbu who came here while you were called by nature. I think he was curious to see what you were working on since you only returned today's morning from the snow country. Nico responded monotonously, but when he sensed my presence he quickly ran away before I could apprehend him. Naruto nodded. He was a little glad that he only kept files about the work he does for Konoha, only he didn't keep anything personal or about the United Nations Alliance. Within this place he knew that Danzo wouldn't waste time to try to get his hands on the files. He would have already sent his Umbu to Yuzu to see what had been built, but it was near impossible to enter the island given how crafty Danzo was. He wouldn't be surprised if the root got in, but they wouldn't pass through the barrier that surrounds all the buildings he'd rebuilt. Danzo probably wants more information about the United Nations Alliance. He revealed some of his thoughts to the cat-masked Umbu. Does he not know that you don't bring that work here? Even she knew that Naruto only worked Konoha business within this office. The only thing that would have the United Nations Alliance within the office would be Konoha's membership contract. Naruto was only reviewing it, but it would be held by Tsunade since she was the one representing Konoha within the UNA. I don't know, however I've a feeling he does and might have done this with another purpose, Naruto responded. He seemed nonchalant about the whole matter. He didn't know what went on The mind of that man, so he wouldn't know many things about him. Nico nodded. I'll take my leave before I forget. Kakashi-senpai had told me you wanted a kenjutsu sparring partner. I'm more than willing to be your partner. While she wouldn't say it aloud to the blonde, she was afraid her skills would dull because she never really got to test all her skills with guarding duty and patrols. Naruto smiled. The paperwork I do is indeed not a friend to my skills. He paused for a moment. I'll set up something on a later date. Good, Nico said before disappearing into nothing. No, then to get some work done, Naruto muttered as he buried himself to his paperwork again. Training Ground 7. Being in this training ground was kind of nostalgic. There were so many memories he had of this training ground. It wasn't that every memory he had of this place was pleasing, it was all amusing that he always smiled widely despite the fact that he couldn't say every memory was pleasing. Perhaps it was because of his obsession with Sakura and his desire to be closer to Sasuke. It turned well. Naruto shook his head. Perhaps he shouldn't be sarcastic in his thoughts. Nisan, you made it. I was beginning to think that you had ditched me for that old hag. Konohamaru exclaimed after Naruto made his appearance. Old hag was referred to the Godame Hokage. The blonde knew that the boy wouldn't call Tsunade an old hag in her face. If he did that, he would be facing hospital time. In response, Naruto walked out to the genin. The boy seemed to sense that something was coming because he started to move back. I meant Hokage-sama. Konohamaru blurted out. Naruto sighed, but didn't deliver a punishment to Konohamaru. He was likely going to take some time to teach the boy some manners. Perhaps he should leave it now since he has already taught him the basics. He could teach the boy more of manners once he made Chunin. He was still just a genin. It was better to leave it for now. He was still a little younger. The best thing was to allow the boy to enjoy his genin days. He turned around to look at the other genin, Hyuga Hanabi, a stoic-looking young girl. Come here, he said, looking straight at the girl who was staring back at him without flinching. It was the usual fashion by which Hyugas stared at you. Hanabi obediently walked towards him, but Konohamaru also came towards him. He looked at the boy. Do laps around the training ground while I speak with Hanabi, but I've already done them. Konohamaru whined loudly. Naruto noticed that Hanabi didn't spare the boy a glance. Her undivided attention was at him. I know, Naruto responded calmly, but do them again, but this time with some extra weight. I'd given you 5 kilograms before, but now I'll increase it by 5 more. Once you get used to it, I'll increase it, but it'll take some time for you to get used to the weights. Before Konohamaru could object, Naruto placed his right hand on the boy's chest. The seal he had placed did what he wanted. I can't move like I used to, Konohamaru complained, trying to move his body around. His movements were restricted because of the extra weights. Do what you are told, Konohamaru, and try not to rob me by using a clone to do the laps for you. If you don't wish to do the laps, go to that dummy. Naruto pointed at the dummy he was referring to and do 250 punches plus 200 kicks non-stop. That meant no break. I'll do the laps, Konohamaru said. Before walking away to do his laps, he had a feeling he would be forced to do the kicks and punches. After the laps, Naruto could be quite sadistic. When it came to training, it was best that he did the laps first. If he does the laps first, he would get a little break, and he may be a little light. Naruto turned to Hanabi. Introduce yourself, he said. Hyuga Hanabi, second daughter of Hyuga Hayashi Genin Shinobi, registration number 121267889. The girl responded in a calm yet slightly cold tone. Naruto shook his head. Even he was not this stiff. This girl could excel in ambush. She had outstanding emotional control, far better than any young lad he knew well. It was to be expected from a Hyuga. Perhaps sticking her with Konohamaru would do well for her. Why are you not training with your team? My so-called teammates are incompetent. So is my sensei. That was a blunt, honest response from the Hyuga. Naruto almost smiled, but he kept his expression impassive, matching Hanabi's incompetent. You say? Naruto paused for a moment. That is something I'll have to look at. Konoha cannot afford to have incompetent jonin training young shinobi. If Hanabi was surprised, she hit it well despite her question. You seem to believe me. That is because I know that not every sensei teach their students what is necessary. However, it could be just that you have high expectations on your sensei that he isn't able to meet. Regardless of who you believe you are still a 12-year-old girl. He then poked the girl on her forehead. The action seemed to annoy the girl, drawing a small smile from Naruto. Don't do that, she said firmly. You're very much different from your kind and gentle elder sister Hinata. Naruto responded. Really? She was unlike her older sister. You know, sister? Yes, I graduated with her at the academy, but you seem a little older and have achieved much more than Hinata. At least that is what father says, Hanabi responded, keeping her expression impassive. That is a story for another time. Now tell me, why do you wish to be trained by me? Konohamaru says that you're a good sensei, and since he started training with your clone he has improved. Well, I didn't think that it was possible someone dumb as him to improve as much he has, Hanabi responded coolly. Well, being subtle wasn't her strength. The Chunin exams come after 2 months. They'll be held in January unless they are postponed. Konoha We'll host the ones to be held in June next year. I wish to make Chunin in my first try. Naruto nodded. Let me see what you can do then. He flicked his finger and a bullet of wind hit the girl in her forehead, making her stumble backwards a little. Attack me with all you got. He got exactly that. The girl attacked him relentlessly. It seemed like she had some point to prove. Her fighting style was hardcore and she was fast as well as precise for a genin. That is despite all her attempts to hit Naruto with her mighty Byakugan activated Hanabi couldn't land a single hit on Naruto. It seemed that her new sensei was ridiculously fast and wasn't even slowing down to allow her to land a hit. It seemed that the man wasn't going to allow her to hit him. It was unlike most jonins. Some would allow her to hit them just to make her feel a little more confident. It wasn't that she lacked confidence. No, unlike her sister, she had it in abundance. But with each failed attempt to nail her opponent, her confidence seemed to take a dive. Under the heavy currents of the sea waves, she was able to land a hit on her opponents even if it did little, but she had never been unable to touch her opponent. Perhaps it was because most of her well-trained opponents were from the Hyuga clan. She didn't delude herself into thinking that she was much skilled to take on all her opponents. Her father was the one who never took it easy with her, but the rest of her trainers took it easy. Well, she was the second daughter of the head clan and was almost put as the heir when Hinata seemed to fail in everything that she did. Of course she was proud. She would do anything to make her father proud. She did not stop attacking her opponent, though she continued attacking him. She was then able to realize that he hadn't made an attempt to attack her. He was only dodging her blows instead of attacking. She entertained the thought that he may have been on the defensive too much to attack her. When the thought ventured much within her mind, her confidence grew, so was her lost strength. She continued to attack him with as much effort as she could muster, but that didn't change anything. By each strike she grew frustrated as fatigue began to take charge. What was more frustrating for her was that she could see nothing from his face. It was just straight blank. Another thought that increased her frustrations was that she had discovered was that he wasn't attacking her because he simply didn't want to. Perhaps he just wanted to tire her out, but if he was waiting for that, he got one thing coming for him. She wouldn't tire before he did. She had the guts and determination. A clan-less man like Naruto couldn't outclass her in everything. A pity she was dealing with Namake's Naruto. Naruto looked at the girl straight into her tired eyes. She was attacking him even when she knew she couldn't beat him. She didn't seem to acknowledge that he was superior to her. Still, he couldn't deny that she a lot better than Konohamaru. She could probably wipe the floor with him if they spare together. The girl had no doubt been trained well, and it was obvious that she'd been trained from her young age. It was the benefits of being from a clan. Naruto jumped away from the path of the girl. Her panting had become obvious. It seemed like she'd been doing laps around the village with Guy and Lee. Well, he could give her some noteworthy credit on her endurance levels as well as her chakra. Someone her age would have run out of chakra already. Well, there were those exceptionally gifted among the Hyuga. If she was trained well, she could even succeed where Niji didn't. Without warning, he vanished into thin air and appeared right in front of her. Her eyes became wide as his punch drove straight into her gut. She felt the impact straight on, and it hurt like hell. She tried hard to suppress a wince, but she failed miserably before she could even hit the ground. Naruto was waiting for her on where the momentum of the punch had been carrying her. This time it wasn't a punch but a hard kick on her back. She was quick to hit the ground. She could have sworn that she heard something snap. Naruto walked up to her calmly. It seemed intentional. She was tired, almost out of chakra, and she could no longer keep her Jujutsu activated. Her eyes looked at the blonde as she tried to get back on her feet. His eyes were looking at her like a hawk. It was like he was measuring her at every part. The intent and blank look on his eyes brought an unfamiliar feeling to her gut. Finally he reached down to her. You are arrogant and overconfident. Most stuck-up Hyugas are that way, but I'll drive that out of your system even if it means breaking every bone in your body. Hanabi wasn't given any time to think or even muster a retort. She was pummeled down the ground by a swift back heel on her forehead. She lost her consciousness. Nissan, don't you think you went a little rough on her? I mean, it is her first day, Konohamaru said, walking up to Naruto. He hadn't said anything when everything was happening, for he knew that he might be on the receiving end of the pain. He'd already had enough of the torture. He certainly didn't want to get to the hospital to get himself fixed today. I'll tone it down a bit tomorrow, Naruto responded, turning his attention to Konohamaru. Have you finished what I instructed you to do? Yes. He was a little afraid that the blonde may tell him to do it again, but he was glad that the blonde accepted his answer. Take a 10 minutes break. Don't do anything. If you even touch Hanabi, I'll be taking both you and Hanabi to the hospital. Konohamaru nodded vigorously before throwing himself down the ground. Naruto disappeared from the training. He had a feeling that the blonde had gone to get some work done in his office, but Konohamaru didn't delude himself to believe that the blonde hadn't left a clone hiding in the trees, and even if he hadn't left a clone, Naruto would know if he touched Hanabi, and he would make true to his word. 10 minutes later, not even a Second, late Konohamaru grumbled to himself after Naruto appeared. He'd recovered a little bit. His exercise he had done hadn't burned all of his chakra, but it was enough to wear him out, and he'd also rested a little when Naruto was still being sadistic with Hanabi. How far are you on the Rasengan? Konohamaru had been learning the Rasengan for more than a month now. I've been failing to get the Rasengan complete with a single hand, but I can do it with clones like you taught me, he beamed proudly at the last words. Naruto nodded. Your chakra control is still dismissive. It appears the reason he couldn't do the Rasengan with a single hand was his chakra control. He knew very well since he once had the same problem, but he was a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and never actually had any formal training on chakra control, and his chakra pools were outrageous for a Genin. Konohamaru didn't have the same amount of chakra. He had. Hey, I've improved my chakra control. Konohamaru took offense in Naruto's words. Yes, I know you've improved, Naruto responded, but it is still not enough. He looked straight at boy. If you had taken Abuse's training seriously we wouldn't be having this talk, but it is your laziness that brought you to this point. He paused for a moment, shaking his head. Create a clone and head to the usual sport to do water walking. Konohamaru complied. When are we going to do ninjutsu? You've only taught me the Rasengan and Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. I'll get onto that, Naruto said in a dismissive tone. I need to get your taijutsu endurance, mental sharpness and speed to a good level. You also suck at genjutsu, hence the need to better your chakra control, but the exams will start in January. There will be enough time to train you, Naruto stated dismissively. He wasn't oblivious to anything, but he knew that Konoha wouldn't be able to host the Chunin exams at the beginning of the year. There was so much that needed to be done. At the beginning of the year he had no doubt that the village won't be able to host the exams. Perhaps they would leave to attend at another village. Tell you what, if I like your improvement I'll teach you ninjutsu next month. What Konohamaru didn't know was that he had planned to teach him ninjutsu next month anyway. Cool, the boy exclaimed happily. Since my clone will be busy with chakra control, what am I going to be doing? Naruto took out a book and threw it at Konohamaru. The book contained shinobi rules, the kind of rules Iruka taught you at the academy, but during our time I've discovered that you've not learned them. You will learn them, and in 7 days you will write a test along with Hanabi. He paused for a moment. Should you fail the test, I may decide against teaching you ninjutsu. Konohamaru gritted his teeth. He had a feeling that Naruto just wanted him to study and know all the rules. It wasn't the first time Naruto had forced him to study a book, and he knew what happened when didn't do that. The blonde always stayed true to his word. Fine, he relented. Good, now put that book away so that we can get you used to fighting with your extra weight, Naruto said. Konohamaru became nervous. I can just go back to beating the dummy, he said, not looking forward to being beaten up by Naruto, but deep inside of him he wanted to show Naruto how much he's improved. Over the time he'd been away he knew that Naruto would praise him for improvements he made. He wouldn't admit it to anyone, but he felt good when Naruto praised him. No, this is necessary. There is no better way for you to get used to the weights faster than engaging in an actual fight, Naruto stated. But he knew that Konohamaru just wanted to skip the routine beatdown. This will also improve your senses as well as reflexes. You may not have noticed this, but each time you fight there is always something new you learn about your opponent's fighting style as well as your own. Actual battles give you experience, and experience is very much valuable. Many have been saved not just by skill but by experience. It took a few moments for Konohamaru to understand everything Naruto had said. When he had understood he grinned. Fine, let us do this. I'll show you how much I've improved so far, the boy stated, taking a proper taijutsu stance. At this time he'd already forgotten about Hanabi. By the time the said Hyuga girl woke up, Konohamaru was busy with Naruto. She held her head as it was throbbing. Her head wasn't the only part that was in pain. It seemed like she had broken a rib. She could feel the pain down there. She looked around to see that she hadn't been moved from the place she had fallen to. Her attire was also unspeakable. Her condition as a whole was disturbing. The nerve of that man to leave her like this. Naruto sensed that Hanabi had woken up and decided to end things with Konohamaru. He'd seen enough. 2 brutal kicks later Konohamaru was on the ground clutching his gut. Naruto noted that he would have to take both his students to the hospital before they went home. He was done anyway. He just needed to talk with Hanabi first. He motioned for Konohamaru to follow him towards Hanabi. You are good for a genin. Your attacks have little power though, and you are arrogant as well as overconfident. The moment I told you to attack me, you attacked me straight without a plan or a strategy. You thought you could actually hit me. Who the hell attacks a jonin without a plan? Mind you, you are just a little girl who thinks she is above all her graduating class and everything. You started to attack recklessly when you noticed that I was avoiding your every attack. If that was a real battle, Hayashi and Hinata would have already buried you by now. Hanabi took all that without as much as flinching. I will train you. I'll drown your arrogance and overconfidence. I'll make you fast, increase your endurance, and give you more agility and flexibility. I'll teach you to fight without the Byakugan. It would take years to accomplish, but it was possible. You're predictable, but I will erase that." He paused, giving her his hand. "We'll start your first day of training tomorrow. Now come on, let me take you to the hospital." Hanabi thought for a few seconds before she nodded, but she didn't take his hand. She could get up on her own. Naruto merely smiled at her and they started walking back towards the village. Both genins flanking both his left and right sides. "Nissan, can't we get something to eat before we head to the hospital?" "Sure, why not?" Hanabi had other thoughts. "Sensei," Naruto looked at her, "I prefer to get myself clean first, and I refuse to be seen eating while looking like this the following day. I have a feeling that today will be a good day," Jubi said in a tone that was nothing but hollow. "Despite this feeling, I have to make a name for myself. I thought what you've been doing over the past month was making a name for yourself. You've destroyed 3 villages and have been attacking everything group of shinobi you came across. You even allowed some to get away so that they could tell what they have seen." A voice responded, no feeling of surprise in the voice. "It is not enough. I have not even entered the bingo books of any great shinobi village. I have to make an attack one of the stronger villages, and then they'll have me in their bingo books. I know for a fact that these stronger villages tend to overlook things. When you pick on the weak, they'll not make much of my power until I show them what I can do. Konohagakure is the strongest village. If you attack them, they may put you in their bingo books, but at these days their strongest shinobi are all inside the village. Attacking it would be tricky. However, I know you can succeed. Suna is still small, Kiri is still weak. That would leave Awagakure and Kumo. But with your plans for IWA, we rule out the village. Kumo may be tricky. Even if you attack the village, there's no guarantee that the Raikage will even bother to put you in his bingo books." The other man reasoned. "Then Konoha, it is," Jubi said, getting up from his throne. "Today will be a good day. You'd already planned on attacking Konoha. Now I understand what you meant by that. Could it be that you plan on attacking because today is the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki's birthday?" There was some silence. According to Orochimaru's intel, the boy has never had a good birthday before, and I believe with everything he's been doing they might plan something big for him. "But you already knew that, did you not?" Jubi merely smiled as he started walking. "Observe what Tsuchikage's daughter will do with her army when they attack Amigakure. I know for a fact that Naruto will appear. His appearance will spark things." A little bit of pause. "I'll be gone for a few days to handle some business." "By business you mean Danzo?" There was no response to the question. Jubi simply disappeared from the dimly lit room. Konohagakure, happy birthday Nissan/Sensei. Naruto was welcomed by the 2 voices in his home training ground. He'd said for them to be at the training ground in his home at about this time. Since he wanted to deal with a few things with them, it was better to train in here since they could get some privacy. He had noticed that there were eyes looking at him as he trained the kids yesterday. It was best that he did not use that training ground again. He smiled at the 2. He could never forget that today was his birthday. This was a day that was a curse to him. It was a day that Kami seemed to love screwing him up over and over again. The only time he had enjoyed his birthdays was when he was with Itachi, but within this village he has never enjoyed his birthdays. It seemed that Kami's full power and influence worked well when he was inside this village. Yes, Kami worked wonders on the 10th of October. I thought my precious students would have forgotten about their sensei's birthday, Naruto said, walking up to the 2. "I would never forget your birthday, Nissan." Konohamaru responded coolly. Hanabi snorted. "You were reminded of it 3 days ago by Iruka-sensei. Had it not been for him you would have forgotten about it." "I may not have known about it if I hadn't been with him when Iruka spoke about it. I also overheard sister talking about it with Niji and I. You just had to ruin the moment." "Hanabi-chan," Konohamaru exclaimed, looking straight at the young girl, "I've told you many times not to call me that." Konohamaru shrugged. "Anyway, we made this for you." He handed Naruto a framed picture. It was the 3 of them in front of a Karaku ramen. After he'd taken the genins to the hospital, he had brought them to the ramen stand so they could have some ramen. Hanabi didn't seem to like the food, but she ate it. The picture was taken after they'd eaten. It was on Konohamaru's insistence that they get one. "So this is why you insisted on taking the picture yesterday," Naruto said, looking at the picture. Team 7 had taken one like this, but he no longer had the picture he'd taken with Team 7. "Okay, maybe that is a lie. He still had it. It was just inside his basement where he stored his weapons." "Thank you," he said, putting away the picture. "Now let us get down to business." He motioned for Hanabi to sit before him and created a clone to help instruct Konohamaru. He had about 3 to 4 hours to train them before he goes to work. He needed to instruct the boy with taijutsu. He had seen some flaws that left the boy wide open to attacks. It was better to correct them now before he went further with any other part of their training. He needed to ensure that Konohamaru's taijutsu wasn't flawed and full of holes. He didn't want anything that would give Guy a heart attack. Speaking of the man, he had yet to speak with him since he returned yesterday. It was made known to him that the man was out of the village on a mission. They had training in the mornings. Well, he would speak with the man once he returned training. With Guy and Lee was good for his speed and taijutsu. He sat down in front of Hanabi and looked straight at her. This will be a process we'll do each time I train you. I'll do this until you can sing every word I say to you. I doubt there will be anything you can teach me in this regard. Father ensured I was drilled everything that I'll need in my shinobi career. Hanabi responded coolly. She didn't need any more knowledge drilled into her head. She already had enough, and it came from the Hyuga clan. Naruto was impressive, but he was clanless. That attitude is what needs to be fixed. Naruto responded in a calm tone. You are thinking because I do not come from a clan I cannot teach you anything. You think low of anyone that doesn't come from a clan. You believe that because you come from a clan that makes you superior to any other person. My belief is justified. Clan children are taught many things from their young age, unlike clanless children, who only get taught worthless things in the academy. Clan children are better than clanless children. The other children cannot defeat me in a battle. Hanabi gave a calm reply. Naruto had to admit that she had some merit in her view, but that doesn't give you the right to overlook everyone because they are not from a clan. Your attitude makes you underestimate everyone that isn't from a clan. This only gives birth to your abundant arrogance and overconfidence. Hanabi seemed to shrug. I've yet to be proven wrong. I have bested anyone in my graduation class. Naruto sighed. This was going to be tougher than he thought. Regardless, I'll rearrange your mindset and try to help give you a new thought process. His tone was stern and final. It was a tone of finality that left the girl without anything to say. I have a few rules and expectations from you, but it doesn't seem that I will be worried about you not making it in time for our appointments. I'm unlike Konohamaru. I am not ill-disciplined and do not lack manners. I have noticed that. Naruto responded. Tell me, Hanabi, if your teammates were hurt, so is your Jonin. You are on a mission. You are the only one left standing unhurt. You could make efforts and make the mission succeed, or you can abandon the mission and save your teammates. What would you do? It is obvious. I would leave my teammates and continue with the mission. If my Jonin sensei was hurt as well as my teammates and I was not, he must be useless. It is better to leave him be. Everyone knows that the mission is more important than anything. Hanabi responded as though it was the obvious thing. It was obvious that this was what she could do if the opportunity presented itself. Naruto gave the girl a stern look that made her flinch. Involuntary. When you are a team, you're supposed to trust each other. Your teammates trust you with their lives. How can you betray their trust like that if you're willing to abandon your teammates like that? You shouldn't be in a team. You should reconsider being in a team and work alone. That way you can die easily. Teams strive for the same objective, but when a member of a team is hurt, the rest of the teammates have to stop everything and tend to the teammate. For a team to be successful, you have to trust each other. If you're willing to abandon your teammates, you aren't suited for team dynamic. Shinobi who abandon their teammates are cold-hearted little bitches who don't understand the value to teammates. Little bitches like you shouldn't be shinobi. I cannot train one that does not value human life. You are one of those hypocrites that embrace Konoha's hypocritical standing of teaching team dynamics to make them look good, but yet teach their shinobi to abandon their teammates. I dislike hypocrites, and I will dislike you if you continue to think like that. You will not have friends, and your teammates will dislike you. Value your teammates as friends, and you will enjoy being a shinobi as you are now. If you were hurt, your teammates would abandon you and leave you to be violated by bandits. They will probably sell you to slavery. I am sure you know what happens in slavery. Hanabi ignored the foul language and refused to say anything. She had no doubt that her teammates didn't like her. She'd always thought that it was because they were jealous of her. Those who were weak always felt envy for those strong and privileged. She wouldn't feel wrong because she had everything she wanted and took advantage of it to become better. I cannot make a decision now, but after some time and I see that you haven't changed, I'll stop training you. I refuse to train a blind child, but to give you a chance, and to be fair, I'll see out if you cannot change. Naruto paused for a moment. I do believe that anyone can change if they are willing to change. What I ask is for you to consider this. Hanabi was still quiet. I'll give it a chance, but I'll not compromise my principles for anyone. Naruto smiled at her. I do not wish for you to change your principles. Your principles are what make you Hyuga. Hanabi, but some principles of certain people are flawed. I merely wish to adjust them to make you a better person than you are today. Hanabi nodded quietly. Good, now let us get to something else. Naruto stated, this is something I'll tell you now and will always tell you. Should you remain to be my student when in battle, expect the unexpected and do the unexpected. I told you yesterday that you are predictable. Being predictable in battle lessens your odds of winning. You have this thing of sizing down your opponents due to their image. Stop it. Never underestimate your opponent. Never let your guard down, and never ever turn your back on your opponent because you think you've won when trapped. Trust your instincts. Never attack an opponent without thinking twice. Always have a strategy. When you enter a battle without a strategy, you are most likely to lose a foot, a hand, the battle, or Even your life, always try to think ahead of your opponent, that way you can have the advantage over him, her, when you don't think you are blind and are most likely to be killed. You must always be aware of your surroundings. Don't engage in battle without viewing your battleground, or you might find in a place that is full of traps, or that will be of a disadvantage to you. Don't rely too much on your eyes, or you'll be killed. When you can't fight without them, use your eyes as a precious weapon tool that ought to be used when facing an opponent worthy of them. Always have a backup plan and always have a trump card. Try always to end the battle quickly. Don't become overconfident because you seem to be winning, or you may end up dead. Did you get all that? Yes, it doesn't seem difficult, Hanabi replied after she had taken in everything Naruto had told. Good, Naruto said, standing up. Let us repeat yesterday's practice, but today I'll give you a handicap. You'll only use your Byakugan when I tell you. I will not give you weights today. It will not be easy as it was yesterday, the girl said, taking a stance. I've analyzed your fighting style and movement patterns. I hope you don't disappoint. Then remember, think, expect the unexpected, and know this: what you see isn't always the truth or reality. Appearances can be deceiving. Naruto motioned for the girl to come towards him. Later that day, the dim lights of the young night welcomed Naruto. As soon as he entered the restaurant, he had a feeling that there was something that had been prepared for his birthday, and this calling was only confirming his suspicions. It had been a suspicious day overall. Tsunade had not bugged him while he was working. After handling his training with Hanabi and Konohamaru, the Godame had oddly only come to greet him and give him more work. It was like she had hiding something from him. He did not bother much about it, but he knew that something was going on. The first thing was that Tsunade would not have allowed him to work on his birthday. The woman was very strict when time called for it, but it was his birthday. With how much she cared for him, she would have threatened him to take a day off, but she hadn't. It was obvious from that moment that the woman wanted to keep him busy. She knew that once he started working, he took his work serious. He didn't like taking some time off from work. He liked getting his work done. Before anything, his peers had only greeted him like always to those he had seen on the day so far. That was not out of the ordinary. He wasn't expecting anything from them. True, they were his friends, but his birthday was something that he kept to himself. He doubted that they knew about his birthday back then. He would not want them to know that he was born the night the Kyuubi attacked Konoha, and those were sad days. Anyways, it was best left alone. Shaking his head, Naruto moved forward to the restaurant. Sakura smiled when she felt Naruto's presence. She hoped this would be a good night for him. Tsunade had stressed to make this day better for him. The other friends were also looking forward to this night. They were also going to use this night to congratulate Naruto on his achievements. They were aware of what he's been doing since he returned from his training trip, and they had yet to honor him for that. This was the day. Jiraiya couldn't wait to see the look on Naruto's face. Although he suspected the blonde knew they had something planned, he knew that Naruto would be surprised by all these. It was the first time he was celebrating his birthday with his friends. After all, this was good to attempt to fix what he didn't do back then. Though things were good between him and Naruto, it still didn't change the fact that he abandoned the blonde when he needed him. Hinata smiled warmly at what was going to happen tonight. She had always wanted to give Naruto a present when it was his birthday. However, she was never able to do so. Today represented the chance for her to do just that. She would finally do what she'd been failing to do over the past years. Here he comes, Ino whispered in 3, 2, 1. Surprise! Oh, how surprised he was. The lights finally came to life and Naruto saw everyone, his peers, Jonin senseis of his peers, Tsunade and his godfather. There were no children, not that there were any children in the shinobi world. The place had some fine decorations, and he could see the warm smiles that everyone was giving him. He felt something tingling inside his heart. It was something that he'd never felt before. This alien feeling brought much warmth to his closed heart. Whatever it was, he liked it. He smiled warmly at everyone, but they didn't say anything. They all waited for him to speak the next words, but before Naruto could even speak, another voice spoke. Finally, the main menu has appeared. It was chilling and cold, judging by the expressions of everyone. This wasn't part of the play. Naruto had been quick to realize the narrowed look Tsunade and Jiraiya were giving were something impossible to fake. Is this part of the surprise? Kiba asked, looking at Shikamaru. He was certainly not getting a good feeling about the voice, hence the question. There was also the fact that he couldn't see the person who had spoken. It seemed that he wasn't the only one who had yet to sense the person speaking. Shikamaru only shook his head slightly. This was definitely not part of the surprise. He'd organized everything with Jiraiya and Tsunade. This wasn't something they had planned, and judging by their looks, they also hadn't planned this. This is going to be a drag. So much for a good night, the Naruto thought with a barely suppressed sigh. Before anyone could do anything further, Jubi appeared. He was standing between Naruto and the rest of the gang. His back was turned against the gang as he faced the blonde. Hello, Naruto. He gave the blonde a smile, a happy smile that showed none of the man's intentions. Yes, this was the man he'd faced when he was traveling with Jiraiya. He could never forget this face he had been having a feeling that he would see the man again, and his gut had been proved right. This wasn't good. You remember me well, you did destroy me, my clone to be precise. Jubi paused for a moment. Jiraiya and Tsunade flashed right beside Naruto. The latter had seen how much Jiraiya had tensed by the sudden appearance of this man. He was certainly strong, she could feel it, and the feeling he gave wasn't good. A single look into his black eyes told her that this wasn't going to end up well. Who are you, and what do you want with Naruto? This is the second time you show yourself before him, Jiraiya demanded, taking charge of the proceedings. I haven't introduced myself to you. He was certainly not speaking to Jiraiya. I am Jubi, and have an interest in you, Namake's Naruto, but for today, I merely came to give you a present which I have no doubt you'll like. It is your birthday after all. I have no interest in you, and what makes you think that I'll like your present? Naruto responded coolly with narrowed eyes. This was indeed not good. He could feel it in his gut that something bad was going to happen. Perhaps Naruto shouldn't have asked the question. If the smile on Jubi's face said anything, the man raised his right hand before pointing it towards the gang behind him. Naruto tensed quickly before flashing in front of the group. A powerful blast of red energy was released. The blast sped towards the group in blinding speeds. Naruto had no doubt the Jonins would be able to protect themselves, but he was certain some from his peer group wouldn't be able to shield from the blast. It wasn't that he underestimated them, he just knew what this thing was capable of doing. He quickly tried to perform the space/absorption barrier to absorb the blast in its fullness, but the blast came at a faster speed, and he was not able to the last hand seal for the jutsu to work successfully. The result was an explosion that destroyed the whole restaurant. The explosion alarmed the Anbu nearby to come and check what was happening. Naruto had been hit by some of the blast. Even though his jutsu had been a failure, he was able to protect everyone before he could recover. Jubi was right in front of him. Naruto was not expecting this. It was obvious that everyone else was still caught up in the explosion to notice this, and this man had taken advantage of the distraction to attack him. The man was only focusing on him. Only Naruto could sense that the man was also in other positions. He figured that it was clones. A hard kick to the temple sent him flying towards another building nearby. He crashed painfully into the building, but was able to recover quickly and jumped to the rooftop of the building before he could do anything. Jubi was right in front of him again. This time Naruto was ready, so he flashed away from the path of another kick, but the man had been expecting it. He quickly appeared before him again, but this time he showed no sign of attacking. You are not the only one who is fast, Jubi said before pointing down at the destroyed building. Naruto narrowed his eyes down. Various shinobi were battling with copies of the man. Those clones are a ticking time bomb. Once one is destroyed, the others will explode. I am sure you can figure out what will happen afterward. What do you want? I just want to play with you. This is my first move. After this I will wait for you to play the next move. Should I grow impatient waiting for you, I'll be forced to make you come out. Jubi stated, why I'm interested in you. Perhaps the fact that the blonde was the first he battled had somewhat made him obsess about him. Naturally, he would not call it an obsession. Naruto narrowed his eyes behind him as he sensed something moving towards him fast. He quickly pulled a kunai. As the clone of Jubi came charging behind him, he was fast to react as he plunged the kunai into the clone's neck. What he did not expect was for the clone to explode, but he was able to shield himself from the blast before he could quickly recover. Jubi was onto him. They were still on top of the building. The man had his right hand raised, pointed against him. Black spiral energy formed. It was dangerously close to him. When it was released in a flash, everything went black. Time skip. The hospital. It was the first thought that invaded Naruto's mind as soon as he opened his eyes, and the brain started to register his sense of smell and touch. He was wide awake. He really hated the smell the hospital gave him and would rather recover at his home rather than at a place like this one. Sighing, Naruto looked at his left where the window was. Judging by the creeping darkness, it was perhaps midnight. Naruto figured that he'd been out cold for a few hours till now. He looked at to the right where was a small table with 2 bottles of water and a cup. Beside those 3 things was a Konoha forehead protector. Naruto shook his head. After seeing the headband, he could recognize it at any time of the day. That was his forehead protector. It was the same he'd returned to Tsunade. The Godame was probably not going to allow him to get off it that easily. He guessed she'd refuse to say anything rash that day because it would have only driven him further away. It was a change of way of doing things. It wasn't natural of Tsunade work around things in such a subtle manner. The Godame Hokage always favored a more forceful way of handling things. She always liked to force things over even when they didn't want to fit, and she would smash them inside the port to fit in with her chakra-enhanced punches. He didn't mind the change though. It wasn't that bad. He examined his body and saw that it wasn't damaged, but his entire upper body was bandaged, just like after he'd returned when he retrieved Sasuke from trying to flee the village. To the seductive snake Sannin, the thought brought a frown on his face. Naruto got out of the bed and stood on his own feet and smiled mildly, replacing the frown that had crept into his face. Yugao, the blonde called as he could feel the presence of the purple-haired Umbu. Yugao appeared in a silent flash within the room and looked carefully at the blonde. It is nice to see you are finally awake. Tsunade-sama had given you a dose of drugs to keep you asleep for the rest of the night, though she said the Go Dame had known that if Naruto woke up in the middle of the night he would know. Doubt leave the hospital without proper rest. She had given him the drug so that he could rest throughout the night without anything interrupting him. She'd said that it was best for Naruto to rest, especially since he was always working himself much harder than she did. Something like that wouldn't work with my tenant still kicking. Naruto responded with a small smile. He sat down on the bed again and looked back at Yugao. His head was pounding mercilessly, but he kept his expression schooled-like. Nothing was wrong. Tsunade-sama had thought it would work even though you are a Jinchuriki. Perhaps her calculations were a bit off. Yugao responded quietly, tone a bit thoughtful at her last words. Despite the fact that Naruto hid it well, she could see that he was experiencing some discomfort, which is why he sat down. She didn't say anything though, but she did wonder how long he would keep it down. Still, considering what had happened a few hours earlier, she would have to report it to the Go Dame. It was for Naruto's well-being after all. If I wasn't injured or wounded it would have worked. When the QB is healing my wounds, its chakra floods my system and it burns any substance inside my body that isn't welcome. Naruto explained lightly. You must be tired watching me all this time I was out. Yugao shook his head slightly. I'm already used to it, but I'll admit that I do get lonely at times, she said, taking a few steps back to lean against the wall. Since it was just Naruto and him being up meant she was now off duty, she removed her mask and folded her hands across her chest. She'd been Umbu for a long time now, and she was now one of the important and most trusted members of the Umbu force. That was why she was the only one even trusted with Naruto's safety. However, being an experienced Umbu didn't mean that she was completely unaffected by working all alone in the middle of the night. No, it did get lonely at times, but this was her job. I assume it would be so, Naruto said. He looked at Yugao rather inventively and tilted his head a little, drawing a questioning look from the older woman. Is something wrong? Naruto shook his head slightly. I don't know why I never noticed it before, but you look rather lovely without that mask. A smile graced his lips as he spoke. There was no doubt about it, this woman was indeed beautiful, and since it came to his mind he thought it was best to say it. Yugao offered the blonde a smile. Thank you, she said, thanking him for the compliment. Your smile is rather beautiful, you should keep it often. Since it was somewhat related to what he'd said, she thought she'd offer her own thought to him. She'd noticed that smiling often wasn't something that he always did these days. The smile he gave these days paled in comparison with the large smile he always used to wear when he was still an orange brat, but now he'd grown up and only reserved his smiles for certain people. His attitude reminded her of Itachi a little. The raven-haired Uchiha always wore an impassive look on his face, and his speech was put in more or less the same way as Naruto does these days. I will keep that in mind. When he attempted to enlarge his smile, his headache glared at him with a rather painful slap that just reminded him that it was still there even though he was ignoring it. His mask slipped for a second, but Yugao didn't comment on it. Was anyone hurt? That was a concern for him, and he really needed to know. He wasn't going to go on to blame himself and put himself up for grabs for holding all the weight this mess has created. No, he'd learned enough to know that it would only make him miserable. Bearing things that he shouldn't only dragged him down and sucked out his happiness. It was okay to be concerned and seek alternative methods to handle the problem. Blaming oneself didn't solve anything. It was still hard to grasp that on his birthday Kami had decided to screw him over again. However, it was alright with him. His happiness did matter a lot, and besides, he couldn't find peace if he was just miserable. Shinobi holding all the weight of problems on his shoulders. The happier one was, the brighter the path one sets for him / herself. Yugao shook her head. Everyone is alright. There was only some property damage, but it should be fixed soon as it wasn't anything disastrous. The Umbu responded calmly. Naruto nodded. At least it was some good news. He wouldn't have been happy if others were hurt. However, just because everyone else was fine didn't mean that he was going to allow this declaration of war to go unpunished. No, he would search more about this man and do something about his attack. That is at least some good news. Naruto finally responded with a release of his breath in relief. It is still such a pity that your birthday was never celebrated, Yugao said with a small sad on her face. With everything he's gone through in his life, she believed that he deserved at least a good night with friends and family, but it was never forthcoming. What was worse was that he'd been standing on the door of good time and had caught a glimpse of it, but was never able to touch it because it just went boom. Yeah, Naruto could give a short response with a sad smile that matched Yugao's. Yugao noted that he wasn't burying his emotions so that she couldn't see that was indeed sad that it had gone badly a few hours ago. It was a good sign on him. Personality. There were people who refused to show it even when they were hurting, and that only brought them more sadness. Don't allow it to get to you. It was something that no one was expecting. When things like this have happened, we can only accept them and move on with our lives, Yugao advised wisely. Well, she had more years under her belt than the blonde, and these years being Umbu have taught her many things, and she wasn't stingy enough to deny the blonde a few words of comfort. Naruto merely nodded in response, choosing silence over adding something. Are you going to be alright alone, or should I accompany you? Yugao said, knowing that even if Tsunade had said he shouldn't leave, he was going to leave. If not, the Godame would not have gone as far as to have him drink sleeping pills. Thanks, but I'll manage alone. You should go home and rest. It is already late anyway, Naruto said with a small smile. He then stood up and took a step towards his headband, and then the headache slapped him again. His movements halted for a second. Are you alright, Naruto? Yugao asked with concern evident in her expression. Naruto nodded. I have a serious headache, but I'll manage. I have some painkillers in my house, the blonde responded. Before he reached the forehead protector, he took it and looked back at Yugao with a smile. Thanks for watching over me, and good night. He disappeared in a flash of yellow after those words escaped his lips. Good night, Yugao responded and thought before sighing she needed some rest. Without wasting more sleep time, the purple-haired Umbu disappeared from the room in a puff of smoke. The following day, Tsunade's office. The fifth Hokage looked at her former teammate Jiraiya, who was sitting comfortably by the window frame looking outside the Hokage tower. He seemed to be thinking hard about something. A pity the Godame didn't have one of those Yamanaka techniques to invade his mind. It would be a blessing if she had a technique like that, though she wouldn't need to open her mouth and use bodily threats to get half-truths from anyone leaving her day. Dreaming, Tsunade looked back to the paperwork in front of her. Looking at it, she had no words to define it. She merely picked up a pen and began writing and signing a few forms. She could think while doing this kind of work. Despite some public damage from last night's incident, there were no causalities that they'd suffered. It would have been certainly unacceptable if they'd suffered some causality, especially when Konoha's strongest had been present during the attack. There was nothing that could shout a loud and clear message that said we've become weak than something of such a nature occurring under their watch. She'd not think that something like that would happen. No, she was only planning to have a good night, drinking some sake and enjoying Naruto's night. Perhaps she may have even pestered Naruto get her some of that sake from the land of toads. She could almost drool at the thought of such sake washing over her throat with that burning sensation. The thought made her swallow and lump and stop such thoughts before she became excited. After all the planning they'd gone through to ensure that Naruto had a wonderful birthday, Kami had to screw it all up. Tsunade felt angry at such a reality to be scripted for their lives. To see the Godame had thought something wonderful for Naruto would happen, but wasn't the case. Well, what happened happened. Moping around about it and singing curses to Kami wasn't going to solve it. No, it was only going to make them worry and be miserably. The only choice they had was to accept it and move on with their lives. Tsunade could only hope that Naruto had such thoughts inside his mind. What is keeping that brat up anyway? Tsunade asked, looking back at her former teammate. She couldn't quite focus on her work today until she spoke to her beloved blonde. Don't be impatient, Haim, Jiraiya said with a small shrug of his shoulders. He will come when he is ready. He must have spent much of the time during the night thinking rather than sleeping. The Toad Sage reasoned he could understand that not everything with Naruto would be in place. After what has been happening around his life recently, he discovered that the stress of killing was getting to him, since it wasn't something that he was used to dealing with, and this was bound to shake him up. If the blonde had just woken up like everything was perfectly fine, then he would be obligated to check whether something had flipped inside Naruto's head. Tsunade nodded. I understand that, but it is still unusual for him to wake up this late and be late for a meeting we called him some time ago, and still there hasn't been anything. A thoughtful look morphed into Tsunade's expression as she spoke. She'd seen him work overnight, but he would still wake up early to begin the day regardless of whatever he seemed to do. Naruto had always been the one to wake up early, and he always respected her calls. Well, that is after he returned from his training trip outside the village. Continuing, Tsunade spoke again. Keeping someone on the watch out for him seems like a good decision to make. I understand we can't always have someone with him, but whenever possible Yugao has to be watching his back. Jiraiya nodded, having nothing against Tsunade's suggestion. It will be good since we don't know if something like this will happen again. Naruto can't always be looking at his back. Someone trusted must be watching his back when he can't. No one was invincible in this shinobi world regardless of how strong you were. Jiraiya had lived long enough to know that you couldn't even survive in this world if you were alone, especially for someone like Naruto. He was both the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed demon fox and the only child for the late Yoname Hokage. Aside from that, Naruto was trying to form relationships between Konoha and other villages. Not everyone agreed with that thought, given all these his life is always to be at risk. Being a ninja was a risk itself. There are so many things that pile up, and many masked creatures that come across in the road of shinobi, and those who were alone had a limited time parading about the death and agony-filled road. We also have to deal with this new threat from his appearance. He is the same person who's been causing trouble in the smaller villages. Jiraiya added, shielding Naruto wasn't going to do it at all. It was only half the job. The threat also had to be removed from existence if the blonde was to be safe. If nothing else, he appears to be making a name for himself. Tsunade nodded. I'll send a message to Suna and Kirigakure to have them keep on the lookout for him. She said the least we can do now is keeping the details about the incident from leaking out. If it got out, it would be a problem for her and Konoha. She didn't want anything that would threaten Konoha's state of power and image unless that man himself leaks the details about it. Konoha would keep quiet about it, but she would alert her hunter Nines and her allies about such a man. Yes, she wouldn't mind ripping his limbs out of his body for ruining things for her. I will leave today to find out more about this threat. I'm sure that my contacts can find something about him. He has to have come from somewhere. Jiraiya said, confident that he would be able to find something about this new threat. Tsunade nodded as she trailed off when Naruto appeared in a puff of smoke inside the office. Even the little things had to be taken notice on this day. First thing about his appearance was that he didn't use the usual method of coming into the office from his house. It was always a flash of yellow, nothing gusts of wind or a swirl of flames. She had no seen him appear in a puff of smoke. The second thing she noticed was that he still wasn't wearing the headband she'd left for him. It was his. After all, Tsunade knew that he'd taken it with him when he left the hospital. Yugao had filled her in about it when she gave her report earlier in the morning. Of course, Tsunade wanted the leaf forehead protector to be firmly tied around his head, but she couldn't say it now. The thought that she couldn't say anything about it now made her bit her lip. Jiraiya studied Naruto's expression for a moment. Nothing was out of place. He seemed to be perfectly fine. The Sannin didn't want to believe that it was the case. No, he believed that the blonde was still human enough to feel anything, and he shouldn't be perfectly fine if he can still feel like normal humans do. Naruto sat down on a chair in front of Tsunade's desk and released a sigh. I'm sorry I'm late. His right hand moved towards the back of his head and a nervous smile plastered across his face. I kind of fell asleep while I was in my bath. He sounded embarrassed about it. This was something new to this new Naruto and a bit nostalgic when remembering that the old Naruto was prone to do something stupid every now and then. Tsunade smiled at the thought. It was good to see that the old Naruto was still into. The blonde Hokage responded to him. It's okay, she said. Naruto nodded. It still would have been embarrassing if a shinobi like me ended up drowning in my own bath. When you look at it, it would have been embarrassing. The story would probably be titled The Son of Konoha's Yellow Flash strategically died after drowning inside his bathroom on the 11th of October morning. It won't be much more of embarrassingness unless it would be amusing more than anything. Tsunade responded with a small smile on her face. It is good that you've not lost your sense of humor, Jiraiya said, smiling at his godson. How are you, Naruto? I'm well. Aside from a sleepless night, there aren't any problems, Naruto responded calmly. Tsunade nodded. I'm glad that you were not seriously hurt last night. My wish was to give you the best birthday party, but that wasn't to be. The Godame Hokage said a bit sadly. How are you dealing with all that? Well, Naruto gave a simple response to the question. Tsunade frowned at this kind of response from the blonde she eyed Jiraiya, who shook his head slightly. It was best to leave for now and not force things. Okay. Judging by her tone, it was clearly obvious to Naruto that it wasn't okay. There wasn't anything that she wanted to see him for other than seeing how he was doing. If you want, you can take the next 2 days off. She wasn't sure he would, though. Naruto was always serious about work and worked like shizen at most. Thank you, Naruto said, smiling a bit at Tsunade. I'll take the offer. Naruto didn't feel like working. He had other things to do and he still had to meet Itachi today as well as the Wind Daimyo. He also needed to blow some steam before anything could be said further. Danzo decided to make his presence in the office. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade narrowed their eyes at the Warhawk, knowing that whatever the man had come here to say had something to do with last night's incident. His presence was almost predictable to both Sanins. They'd expected that he would eventually crawl out of his burrow and come here. What can I do for you, Danzo? Just by her look, the message was clear. She didn't want him in her office. Danzo looked at Naruto for a moment before looking back at Tsunade. I am merely interested in how someone unknown was able to infiltrate this village and still manage to cause damage under your nose. Tsunade didn't entertain the Warhawk. If you have something to say about this, Jubi, you can say it. If not, you are excused. Danzo the Godame spoke in a low growl, her eyes still glued at the cripple. You call yourself protectors of Konoha, but you couldn't even do anything about it when an unknown shinobi threatened this village. His eyes narrowed at Naruto. If Hiruzen had given you to me when I requested That I would have trained you to become Konoha's most valuable asset. What is your point? Naruto asked in a perfectly neutral tone. You are weak for a Jinchuriki. With all that power inside of you, some unknown shinobi shouldn't have taken you out like that. The Warhawk responded flatly. Jiraiya decided to intervene before Naruto could respond. Why is it whenever trouble seems to strike your route, are never there to help out? It is because I was leaving you people to protect the village. However, it appears that trusting you with the safety of Konoha wasn't a wise decision, Danzo stated and turned his heels. If you can't do your job properly, then you should step aside and allow someone who can do it. He left the office. After those words, that bastard Tsunade growled. After the cripple left her office, I wouldn't be surprised if he had something to do with this, she said. Don't read too much into it, Tsunade. Jiraiya lectured. We just need to keep an eye on him for now and ensure that he doesn't do anything. If he does anything, we will put him down. He wasn't going to allow the war do what he pleased like his sensei. With what the Warhawk has done behind the Hokage's back, the third should have had him executed long ago. It wasn't a secret to both Jiraiya and Tsunade that Danzo wanted the mantle of Hokage. He's been after the seat since long ago when the second Hokage favored Hiruzen before him. Jiraiya wasn't going to allow a man like Danzo take Konoha under his command. He knew if something like that happened, many people would suffer, and the first person Danzo would be after is Naruto. Jiraiya was willing to do anything to ensure that the Warhawk doesn't touch his godson. Sighing, Tsunade nodded. That man just gets to me, she said before looking at Naruto. There was nothing that I really wanted to discuss with you, Naruto. You are free to leave if you want. Naruto nodded. I may leave the village today, he said. Where will you head to? I'm also leaving today. Perhaps we can head out together, Jiraiya offered, smiling at the blonde. I would rather be alone, Naruto said, shaking his head slightly, but I'm going to the wind capital. I may not see you until tomorrow, Bachan. With that, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Have we been talking to a clone, and did he just call me Bachan? Tsunade asked, looking straight. Jiraiya the Toad Sage blinked before he too disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto's house 2 hours later. Home training ground. When you had students to look after, you were never given a chance to enjoy some meditation in your free time. The weather is usually calm at those times, and most people would have completed their morning activities. This time was best for meditation, but the 2 chakra signatures he'd sensed weren't going to make it possible for him to continue with his meditation. Naruto usually sent a clone to teach Konohamaru a few things around this time of the day, since it was a good time to train. There was also nothing that beat a morning exercise to get you started for the day, but today he wanted all his chakra to himself, and he had not thought that his students would be requesting training from him after everything, and so he had taken the time to meditate. He knew that tomorrow would be a tiring day. He had many places to visit and many people to talk to. He would probably send a message to some, but it would be wonderful if he visited everyone. Well, he could not do everything by himself, but soon he would have something fixed that will help him send messages to those who were members of his organization. Being the president would mean he would have to forfeit some activities. He had yet to officially assume the position since the UNA was still in its early days, but everything would be handled soon after the first conference. Neat-san, Konohamaru called with Hanabi walking beside him. The girl looked stoic as always. Naruto sighed as he stood up. Well, they were his children. He had a responsibility to them. He would not fail as long as he had agreed to train them. He knew of all the activities he had to do. When he agreed to help them with their training, he would have to work around everything to ensure his time was balanced. I thought you would give me a break, he said, voicing some of his thoughts. You told me that a ninja must always be ready for anything, and when things are difficult we have to adapt, Konohamaru stated. Though he did not get the full meaning of these words, he spoke them because they seemed to be the right words to say at the moment. Luckily, Hanabi understood those words. This means that regardless of what has happened, you must be ready. In this case, our training needs to go on despite the fact that you were not expecting us. You did tell us to expect the unexpected. Naruto smiled. You are applying those words at the wrong situation. I told you to expect the unexpected in a battlefield. This is not a battlefield. Who said it was not? Hanabi asked, taking a stance, while Konohamaru merely grinned. This is unexpected, Naruto said calmly, smiling. It is fine then. I was going to have you fight me together to assess both your teamwork abilities. I have so far defined what you need as individuals, but I have not found where you lack as a team. But Sensei Konohamaru and I are not in the same team, Hanabi said, still in her taijutsu stance. I am aware of that, Naruto replied smoothly, but while you are training with me you are a team, my team, and who knows, if you make me happy I might take both of you out on a good mission. That is if he does get time to take Jennings out on a mission. He was certainly not going to be less busy in the next months. More work will only be available for him, and this will only make his schedule tight. Really, Konohamaru was happy about the sound of what Naruto had just said. He would be happy, no ecstatic, to go on a mission with his Nissan, and he knew for certain that his Nissan would never let him do those damn D-rank missions. Naruto's smile disappeared in response. Come at me, both of you, do not hold back. Keep your senses clear and think, if you do not you will end up in the hospital at the end of this session. Nothing further was said as both Hanabi and Konohamaru dashed towards him. The former was coming on the left and the latter on the right. Hanabi was moving faster than Konohamaru. The reason for that would be because the latter of the genin had weights on him that restricted his movements. He could not move on his full speed because of that, but Hanabi had nothing restraining her. She could use all her speed without much trouble. Hanabi aimed higher while Konohamaru aimed lower with a sweeping kick. Being far more experienced and skilled than the two, Naruto moved back before both strikes could hit him. Hanabi was a lot quicker to recover from her miss than Konohamaru. She quickly rushed towards him. Her Jujutsu was already activated. Perhaps it was because he had said no holding back. The only way a Hyuga can fight effectively is when his /shi Jujutsu is activated. Naruto stood still, looking straight at the genin as she made her way towards him. When she got close, he muttered something. Wind breakthrough. Small gusts of wind rushed towards the unsuspecting girl in blinding speeds. Although the jutsu was less powerful, he had increased its speed to make it more effective against the genin. There was no need of something strong when going against a mere genin. He did not want to end up hurting them seriously. The jutsu caught the girl off guard and set her flying backwards. Konohamaru quickly rushed behind her while she was being carried by the momentum. He got hold of her so that she would not land awkwardly and hurt herself. While the match had just started, it would only put them in a disadvantage if the girl got hurt. Quickly, Naruto acted quickly as Konohamaru appeared behind Hanabi. He appeared behind the former. He did not let them off the hook. No, he kicked Konohamaru on the back, sending him back from where Hanabi was coming from. Both genins were sent flying as Konohamaru had gotten hold of Hanabi. Both crashed to the ground, but were able to quickly recover. That was not fair. Nissan, Konohamaru yelled. You never use ninjutsu. When we fight you always use taijutsu, and you should have warned us if you were going to use ninjutsu so that we can prepare. The shinobi world is not fair. I have told you this many times, Konohamaru, Naruto said a bit sternly. Since he was repeating this, I told you to attack me with your full power, and I never did set any limits to myself. It is your problem that you think because last time I did not use, this time I will do the same. Do not think something so predictable about your opponents. He finished with a small grin. Perhaps this wasn't so bad after all. Seeing the kind of look on Konohamaru made him smile. It reminded him how Jiraiya used to cheat when he was training him. Expect the unexpected and do the unexpected, Hanabi said, recalling what Naruto had told her. The same words were told Konohamaru some time ago. You did something we were not expecting you to do. If I did not understand, I would have also been complaining. But I understand when you expect the unexpected, you prepare yourself for anything. You don't limit your opponent based on your knowledge of him or her. Once you prepare yourself for everything, you are a lot more ready to battle than anyone. But the truth is that there are just some things you cannot prepare yourself for. Some jutsus you cannot defend yourself against. However, because you are more prepared for surprises, you are most likely to recover quickly. Naruto nodded, smiling a bit proudly at the Hyuga. You understand it well, Hanabi. Even though you were the one who got hit, you did not act like Konohamaru, the blonde stated calmly. As I said, the shinobi world is not fair, but because the world is not fair, you don't have to be unfair. I expect you to be shinobi of honor and respect. He paused for a moment. Konohamaru, what were you doing? What he is referring to when I got hit by that wind jutsu? Hanabi cleared the air for Konohamaru. She was also sending the genin a slight glare. I was trying to save you, Konohamaru responded, returning the glare to his fellow genin. I did not need to be saved. I could have recovered well without getting hurt, Hanabi retorted, glaring at the idiot before her. Seriously, did he really think she needed to be saved? She was even stronger than him, for heaven's sake. Konohamaru snorted. Yeah right. Naruto took a few steps towards the genins. Konohamaru, one of the principles of being in a team is that you must trust your teammate and their abilities, and with your life you chose to try to save Hanabi because you did not trust her ability to recover without being hurt. You know her more than I do, but I know that she would have recovered. If you cannot trust your teammates' ability to handle themselves, you risk everything. This time Naruto had no stern face. He was giving the genin a small smile. At least I had good intentions, Konohamaru defended himself. Hanabi merely snorted in response. Most people have good intentions, but their choices end up screwing things. I have taught you to think carefully before you make a choice in a battlefield. Every choice is crucial, and a bad one could cost you your life, Naruto stated. Tell me, Konohamaru, what could stop me from attacking if you or Hanabi are looking at me? Nothing, Konohamaru mumbled quietly. Because of your good intentions, both of you ended up getting hit, and in a battlefield that could have been a huge blow. Naruto paused again. If you had sent your shadow clones to keep me busy while you recover Hanabi, we would not have been having this conversation. Hanabi nodded. If you had sent clones to fight Sensei, I would have recovered quickly, and we would have regrouped before attacking together, but in the end we ended up being attacked together. I got it, it won't happen again. Konohamaru didn't like it a bit that both Naruto and Hanabi were ganging up on him. Honestly, he felt betrayed by the latter. Good, Naruto said, giving the boy a smile. Now let us do this again. This time make your numbers count. Remember that fighting in a team gives you an advantage. Make the advantage count. Make the fact that it is two minds against one count. Complement each other in your attacks. Always know where your teammate is even when you are not looking at him or her. Try to predict your teammate's move so you could work something that will complement that move in sync with your teammate and you will understand each other well. Both genins nodded before rushing off to Naruto again. A few minutes later, Naruto looked at his students with a small smile. You did better than I expected. Have you been practicing working together as a team? Konohamaru shook his head. We did this because we heard that your birthday did not turn out well. I heard that not even your party happened because someone attacked before it could start. I did not want to do this, but Konohamaru insisted, saying that it would make you smile if you were feeling down because your birthday party was ruined and you ended up spending the night in a hospital bed. Hanabi stated in a tone filled with politeness yet dripping with indifference. That was thoughtful of you, Naruto responded, smiling. Your teamwork is good, but there has to be much improvement on both of you. We will fix that as time moves on. Is it over for today, or will there be something else? Should we return later? Hanabi questioned. If there was nothing else to do, she would rather go home and train some more. She would not be satisfied until she is finally able to touch Naruto. So far the blonde never allowed her to touch him. She had come close, but she has never been able to land a hit, and that did not dwell with her. We will do some light training, Naruto said as a clone puffed into existence, something which Hanabi noted. I was told that to be able to do a jutsu without leaving hand signs you had to be a master of that certain jutsu. The first time I saw you use the shadow clone jutsu you used a single hand sign, but now you did not. I do understand that one needs to understand a jutsu thoroughly to be able to use it effectively, but I know for a fact that knowing a jutsu thoroughly does not enable you to use it without hand signs or a single hand sign. You got to have the chakra control to do it. Hanabi paused for a moment. I know that you have large amounts of chakra. Nothing much can be hidden before my eyes. My question is, how good is your chakra control, sensei? Naruto merely smiled and said nothing about the question. Konohamaru, go with my clone and continue with your normal training. Why do I have to be the one to be trained by a clone? Konohamaru mumbled to himself as he followed Naruto's clone from behind. The clone heard him but chose not to comment. What will I be doing? I will tell you when I come back, Naruto said before disappearing in a yellow flash. He came back after a minute or so. Your taijutsu is good. There is nothing I can do about it, especially since I am no Hyuga. However, I did tell you that I will teach you to fight without your Byakugan, but for that to happen I need to build your reflexes. Hanabi nodded. For the next few days I will be throwing kunais at you and you will have to dodge them without your Byakugan. We will start here today since I don't have much time, but in the next days we'll find a stream of water. Naruto held a number of kunais on both his hands. He threw one at Hanabi in such fast speed that Hanabi only felt it slice through her cheek, leaving the girl frozen for a few seconds. I have been told that my accuracy is implacable, so you will have to be extra careful, but I will try hard to avoid cutting deep into your flesh. I fail to understand how you categorized this light training, Hanabi stated, bracing herself for the multiple cuts that were surely going to joyfully fill her skin. Perhaps Konohamaru was right about her new sensei. A few hours later, Wine Capital. Your Highness, I've come to claim my date, Naruto said in a respectful tone. Knee on the floor, eyes straight at the wind. Daimyo. He was inside the woman's office within her palace. Miyuki smiled at Naruto. That is something you don't see every day, she said a bit tiredly. Normally she wouldn't have expected him to greet her like that. He always liked being formal, and the most he gave was a small smile. It wasn't that she didn't like the change, she preferred it this way. Please stand up and take a sit, she said. Naruto did as instructed and sat down. How are you, Miyuki? The blonde asked politely. I'm well, Miyuki responded quietly. She tilted her head a little. Are you stoned? She was happy that he was finally able to call her by her name, as she'd told him to do so. The blonde always called her as Daimyo-sama, and she didn't like him calling her like that. Perhaps in public she would prefer it if he called her in a respectful manner, but when it was just the two of them she preferred it if he called by Miyuki. But his whole appearance seems to be a little off, which was making her curious. Naruto chuckled dryly before he offered his response. Not at all, he said. Oh, I thought you may have taken something before you came here. You seem a little different, she said, looking at him inventively, yet still managed to keep her smile glowing on her face. Naruto shook his head. No, he said, this is just me. I'm still surprised that you were able to notice the little difference in me. I mean, I've not done anything that could be said to be out of character. I've learned a lot about you since our fateful meeting, and I may not be a shinobi, but my eyes are quite perceptive. Miyuki responded ever so smiling. Naruto nodded before responding, believe it or not I was quite loud 3 years ago. My maturity has brought some stillness in everything I do. Often I am called boring by some of my peers because of my change. The first person to have said that he was boring was Ino. The Yamanaka girl was overly active, especially when she started opening her mouth. Since he no longer did things for fun, the blonde had the guts to tell him that he was no longer fun. He found it a little amusing since they used to say that he was annoying more than anything back then. It doesn't hurt to smile every now and then. Naruto didn't deny that he was being told that more often these past days. So I've been told. He spoke his thoughts before pausing. He looked at the daimyo carefully before speaking. You look tired, he said. I've been working without break since early morning. The tiredness rushed into her expression. For an exhibition, my body is really tired and I was thinking of retreating to my quarters to rest. Naruto nodded. He wasn't expecting her to be in this state. Well, he could go somewhere else and kill time. Perhaps he could go to the snow and rest up a little. Koyuki had some best places that could ease the tensions on his body and ease off some of his worries. I guess you won't be able to use me like you wanted. Then Miyuki shook her head. No, not at all, she said. Can you do something for me? Naruto nodded. Anything as long as it is within my capabilities. He said he wasn't going to say anything when he didn't know what she may ask of him. Miyuki took out 3 files from her left drawer and placed them on her desk. All were stacked with papers. I need these documents to be in Sunagakure. I only finished working on them earlier, and since you'd promised you'd come today, I thought you could act as my delivery boy. A rather sweet smile plastered across her face. I can do that, but I'd not planned on doing any work today. Nevertheless, if it is for the daimyo, then I will do it. Good, Miyuki said, handing the blonde the files. You can spend some time with Garo. While you do that I can rest and then freshen up. When you return you'll take me for that date you've come to claim, she finished with a wink. Naruto scratched the back of his head a bit nervously. You know, I'd not thought of taking you out for real. I was here to keep true to me word. I will pretend I didn't hear any of that, Miyuki said, standing up. Now be on your way. Later that day you are still here, Naruto said as Jiraiya entered his study. The Sannin stood leaning at the doorframe for a few seconds before he welcomed himself inside. Naruto had thought the Sannin would have left the village already by now. Jiraiya nodded. I ended doing something for Haim. After that I decided to leave tomorrow in the morning since it is late anyway. The Sannin then took a seat in front of Naruto's desk. He narrowed his eyes at what Naruto was working on. Fuinjutsu. The notes looked to be complex. He had never quite seen the work Naruto does with seals, so he was curious. The blonde did not seem to take Jiraiya's curiosity seriously, or perhaps he was just oblivious to it. Leaving at this time has never bothered you before, Naruto stated. It wouldn't have been for the first time for the man to leave the village at this time. Should he had decided to leave, he had done it before. He could do it again. The elder Toad Sage shrugged. I am not in much of a hurry, and besides we have never really gotten some time to talk, just the two of us. You have been busy lately, and over the past 3 weeks you were away from the village. You only returned recently. Naruto nodded. When you have something to achieve you find that there is no time that you should waste. Time is essential in the shinobi world. As such I always try to make use of whatever time I have available. I understand that you don't have to teach me about it. I have been living longer than you have, Jiraiya responded. While I do agree with you, one cannot work continuously without rest. If you do that, it will only lead to failure on what you plan, because at crucial times your mind and body may fail you for the lack of rest. I know that, Naruto said calmly. He had been trained well. After all, I always make sure that I give myself enough rest, and I cannot say that I have not given myself much needed rest, because the near month I spent in the snow it was more of relaxation than work. Ho, so the princess treated you well, huh? Jiraiya said, giving Naruto a lecherous grin. His mind was already working on a few scenarios that may have played down between Naruto and the princess. My visit there was worthwhile. Naruto stopped when he noted that he did not use the term pleasant he usually used when defining things that were pleasing to him. He decided not to indulge Jiraiya on what he was suggesting. What may have or may not have happened was not the man's business. Don't tell me that you let another one go, Jiraiya said with disappointment in his tone. He even shook his head for a few moments. When was his godson going to stop being impassive and get laid? I don't think like you, Jiraiya, Naruto stated. Surely things would not be well for his dream if he thought like Jiraiya. I am not looking to get lucky. Each time I see a woman I have far more important things to do than think about getting laid, Jiraiya snorted. Yeah right, what did you want to talk about? Naruto asked, getting to the point because he did not want to get into this kind of discussion with the Sannin. He was busy with his seals. To be discussing this kind of things with the man he was certainly not looking forward to any plans of settling at the moment. What are you working on? Jiraiya asked, narrowing his eyes at the scroll in front of the blonde. I am working on a space/time jutsu that is similar to the Eurasian. I am designing this one for long-distance teleportation. The distance that needs to be covered when traveling from place to place takes a lot of time and energy. Naruto paused for a moment, thinking of something. No Scratch that, it will be different from narration, it will be set like portals that I will create in selected locations. Jiraiya nodded. If you need any help tell me and I will help you. I sometimes forget that you are a seal master. Well, it should happen when you don't usually use your skills when creating new seals, Naruto said. Jiraiya shrugged. I use my other skills more often than not, and Fuinjutsu is not usually practiced these days. It seems like people have forgotten about it. Naruto nodded. Well, most shinobi today prefer to use ninjutsu than fuinjutsu. They think that fuinjutsu is useless, but that is not the complete truth. Fuinjutsu is dangerous and lethal as ninjutsu. Today's generation does not see this. Who wants to be stuck drawing complicated seal formulas when you can simply have fun? Well, at least you are the exemption, Jiraiya said, giving Naruto a grin. Have you thought of how you are going to intercept false rumors about the United Nations? Great things can be ruined by simple words. Someone can say, I have been trying to suppress some rumors and those looking to take advantage of the situation, but sooner rather than later you will have to look for a permanent solution. I am already aware that this is happening, Naruto said, surprising Jiraiya because he had yet to tell the blonde about this. Don't be too surprised, Godfather. You don't actually expect me to remain clueless. When running something as big as the United Nations Alliance, I don't expect you to be oblivious. But I am surprised nonetheless that you were able to get this information quickly. I had thought that you would only hear it from me, Jiraiya responded calmly, getting over his surprise. I also have connections, Naruto revealed. I have only acquired them recently though, but they get the job done and so far have only made me happy that I have gotten such connections. Jiraiya was not going to ask who the contact was, but he could give the boy an advice: be careful with who you associate yourself with. Naruto, some people can work with you peacefully, but when things get a little hard they are quick to betray you, while others will work with just so they can stab you in the back at the end of the road. You should be careful with who you work with and who you associate yourself with. Some people don't need much to ruin you. Naruto nodded. I have been told that, but thank you for the word of advice, the blonde stated. However, I was very careful with who I work with in the United Nations Alliance. I made sure to get people who can be trusted, but you can never be too sure about anything in the shinobi world. Nevertheless, I am positive that I made the right choice with whom I will be working with. If you had still been your younger self, I would have been worried you were a bit dim those days and could possibly house a murderer without knowing much about it, Jiraiya stated carefully so not to insult the blonde, but Naruto took no offense in the words. I would not be too sure about that, Naruto said. Smiling slightly, he may have been somewhat dim and oblivious to certain things, but he had always been a good charge of character. His troubled childhood had forced him to study people's behavior, and he had done so for his own good. When you are the pariah of Konoha, you have to learn to read people. My life was not that easy. When growing up I had to be always on guard when people always glared at you and called you a demon. You could never be too safe. When I learned that the villagers hated me, I always tried to distinguish between those who liked me and those who pretended to like me, Naruto explained smoothly. His childhood was not easy, but it was something that made him who he was today with the help of Itachi. Of course, Jiraiya nodded a bit sadly. If he had been there, Naruto would not have faced any of that, but things do happen. Naruto had said it himself. The most important thing was not that you screwed up, but it was that you acknowledge that you have indeed screwed up and try to change things for the better. Wallowing in self-pity was not going to help anyone. At least there was some good that came from everything, Jiraiya said a bit bitterly than he had intended, but Naruto said nothing about it. It is always good to look on the bright side of things, Naruto stated in response, but that did not mean that one would have to completely forget the not-so-bright side of things. No, all things had to be considered with all that one could be able to make decisions that would do benefit than harm. Jiraiya nodded. How about you tell me the structure of the UNA? I have yet to be told much about it. That will be of another day, Naruto responded calmly, but I will nominate you for a position when we hold our first conference next month. I will not say much about the conference, but things will become much more clear after the conference. Have you started the preparations? Don't worry about it, everything will be sorted out. I would not want to ruin things for myself now, would I? Guess not, Jiraiya said, standing. I will see you when I return. Don't forget to contact me when you need help. I will always be available to help you out. Naruto nodded before folding his scrolls. I'm also running out of chakra. Jiraiya blinked and then sighed. You are a clone, he said. Naruto nodded. The boss hasn't returned from the wind capital, the clone said. Jiraiya shook his head before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Things with Jiraiya were improving little by little. If things continued like this, they would return to have a close relationship like the one they had when the Sannin was training him before the finals of the Chunin exams. That had been before he knew the Sannin was his godfather and had kept a secret from him, but things were progressing steadily. Naruto knew that his godfather was not a bad person. He was a good man who was really trying hard to make up for lost time. It would be hypocritical for him to preach peace and that people can actually change when he can't move on and forgive other people in a peaceful world. He wished for people forgave each other. They gave each other second chance. People were given opportunities to change. Meanwhile, Yuzu, it was probably The first time Miyuki had seen the sun set above the endless water of the sea, the water itself gave a nice view from where she sat down. She was settled on top of a cliff within Uzushigakure. Her background showed an image of greens that glowed with all the riches the land offered to them. In front of the cliff there were endless waters of the sea that surrounded the island, crashed into it wave after wave. The scenery was quite beautiful, and smell was just the beauty of nature. There were no chemicals mixed within the air she breathed the pure breath of nature, and it made her body calm, and the breath washed the insides of her body like a magical touch. Just breathing in and out seemed to be this joyful activity that she couldn't stop doing. Miyuki hadn't thought that Naruto would actually take her to such a place, but she was glad that he did when she requested that he come on this day. She'd not really thought of going on a date with him, she'd only thought of spending some peaceful time with him. This was good nonetheless. She preferred it from anything else. This was also nice. It beat going to any restaurant. Are there other places like this around the island? Naruto nodded, looking ahead. The water that was colored with color alike that of the setting sun, but this one gives the better view of the sea, and the air around here is quite relaxing. Normally he used this place to relax himself. If he was within the island, it was also easy to gather natural energy within this place. Miyuki nodded. It is quite beautiful. When you said you were taking me somewhere, I didn't think you were taking me at such a place. She smiled at the blonde was sitting down on her right side. Naruto smiled, looking back at her. Well, since it was on short notice, I just decided to pick this place. It relaxes me the most and has a certain amount of peace within it that I can't disagree with. That the daimyo paused for a moment. Are you okay? Naruto's smile twitched a little, but it didn't falter. Yeah, he said, I just have a lot in my mind. Well, we have time, you can talk to me. I may not know much about the shinobi world than you do, but I'm sure between the two of us we can get somewhere. The green-haired daimyo offered with a warm smile. Naruto was quiet for a few moments. He didn't have a problem with her, and his mask was easily slipping off its place already. Well, it couldn't be helped. I've always been lonely my whole life. Even though I could be smiling and laughing during day, at night I would be alone, bundled in the corner of my cold apartment. Even though I could smile, deep inside of me I was lonely. I guess you can say that I was never really happy. Miyuki's smile slipped for a moment. Naruto's tone was something new. He mostly had a neutral tone or a blank one, however this one was a bit sad, and it brought evidence of his loneliness. I can only guess that it wasn't easy, but I believe that in order to be happy you have to make choices that will lead you to happiness. Everyone has a choice and everyone can create their own happiness, Miyuki stated warmly. How about it? Are you still lonely? Naruto smiled sadly and looked at the heavens. I think I am, he said. I may have people I trust and can call family, but in the end of the day I still go home alone. Perhaps I deal with this by burying myself into my work. Loneliness is a rather difficult disease to cure, especially when you've been suffering from it for a long time. I know a cure nonetheless. Miyuki flashed Naruto a bright smile. Love? Miyuki nodded. Have you ever tried falling in love? She didn't think that was likely, though Naruto seemed to put his work above his happiness, and that was a problem with him that she'd noticed. Naruto shook his head. I was madly in love with a girl named Sakura when I was still a genin. I loved her with all my heart, and seeing her smile brought so much warmth inside of my heart. However, over the past 3 years I stopped thinking about her and love. Did you ever form a relationship with her? No. The love was one-sided. Each time I tried asking her out I was always rejected in the most painful way. Perhaps I decided that chasing after her wasn't going to do me any good since there was someone else she loved. Naruto responded quietly. After that I've never really focused on love. I've been focused on my work and goals. Miyuki nodded silently before responding. Are you perhaps afraid of being rejected again? Naruto became thoughtful for a few moments before responding. That may be the case, he said. However, a recent experience has taught me something valuable. You never know what will happen tomorrow or in the next minute. If you wait for tomorrow to find happiness, tomorrow might never come. He was referring to his ruined birthday party. He'd realized that a part of him really wanted to enjoy himself on his birthday for the first time in his life with the people he called friends and family, but that never got to happen, and it saddened him a little. I couldn't have said it any better. Miyuki never lost her smile. Closing your heart will not solve anything. It will only bank the loneliness inside of you, and you can never be truly happy with your life. Besides, isn't it that you desire peace? Peace is happiness. How can you find peace with a frown on your face without a sense of happiness? Inside of my heart I'm likely to lose all my cares for everyone. The kind of thought that I'm not happy in others shouldn't be as most likely to arouse. I've also been told that without a sense of happiness in the kind of journey I'm about to take I'm most likely to lose my ways and fail. Naruto responded. Miyuki nodded. Whoever told you that was right, she said. Happiness brings about a sense of peace. If you only focus on your dreams and forget about happiness, you'll only end being miserable, and worst of all, you'll fail to reach your dreams. I get that. Naruto sighed. How about you? Any luck in love? Miyuki merely smiled. That is my little secret. Huh? Naruto gave the woman a look. That is not fair. Here I was pouring my heart to you. Miyuki chuckled lightly. The mock hurt look kind of looked good on him. The woman thought, I never said I was going to pour out my heart to you. I just said I would listen and perhaps we would get somewhere. It isn't fair that I have to be the one to share. Naruto pouted a little. The feeling inside of him that was tingling inside of his gut was making him to that. Honestly, he wouldn't have pouted at any time of the day. Miyuki merely smiled at him. Shouldn't we leave before it gets cold? Naruto shook his head, smiling. My body is quite warm and it can produce enough warmth for both of us. It was the truth. He guessed that it had something to do with the tailed beast inside of him. Miyuki looked at him for a moment to see if he was joking or not. She didn't want to know if he understood the implications of his words or not. Oh, okay, she stammered a little. What do you want to know?